So my name is Reggie Thomas. I'm a senior in Steinhardt, studying jazz studies. Well, I'm majoring in instrumental performance with a concentration in jazz studies. What do I identify as racially? Black African American. Yeah. Yes, I do identify myself as a person of color. Where I came from, so I'm a jazz studies major, and where I came from, jazz was kind of viewed as, I mean, there are, jazz musicians of all sorts of like colors and races, but it was very much almost sort of like a black art form. So it was a black dominated space. And then I came here, and that was not the case at all. I was one of, my freshman year, I was one of three, including grad students, black like people in the program. So it was interesting navigating that space. There was like a whole lot of like everything from inside jokes that I didn't get. Um, there's an unspoken, sort of spoken jazz repertoire that all jazz musicians are supposed to know. There's like American songbook standards. There's all jazz standards, and because I kind of grew up in like a black tradition, I also grew up in like the black church, which is a whole nother thing. But there's like a lot of songs that me and the other black musicians in the program knew that they would know, and there were a lot of songs that a lot of the white students knew that we did not know because that wasn't part of our like lineage. So I would get reprimanded for not knowing songs that I had very little connection to. So I had to kind of learn a whole nother lineage of music. It was definitely divisive, but it wasn't as apparent because there were only three of us there. So we kind of, and we didn't even necessarily interact with each other that much. Lenny White is a black mentor of mine. He's the first one that I had at NYU. He kind of came into my life my junior, halfway through my junior year, and it was interesting enough that he's the first like jazz song that I learned in the high school, like my first year, was actually him playing on drums. So coming here, when I learned that he was being added to the faculty, I made a conscious effort to try to study with him, and went audition for his ensemble. He happened to come to my collegium class, which is pretty much like a seminar class where all the people in the program get together. So he came and did a master class there, and then that's when I spoke with him and met him. And then he was like, "Yeah, I want you to study with me." Da 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 da. So that's kind of how I met him, and he's put me on to like whole performing opportunities, recording studios that are very affordable that I did not know existed. He's introduced me to a lot of other jazz greats, a lot of other people that are in the scene in New York. He's just very like he's put me on.
And how has he affected you personally? Like, is he to see being a black man as a someone to look up to, and also like as a leader in your field, no matter what his race is? Like, how does that affect you?
Um, it's him being a leader in his field and being a mentor to me has affected me a lot. I was actually having a lot of doubts about the validity of my degree, like all the work that I put in. I'm like, is this even really worth it? Is this plausible? Did I waste my undergraduate experience? Did I waste all this money? Like, am I in debt for no reason? So having him there and seeing it created like a sort of, I had a moment where I noticed, I was like, this is possible. I can do this. It was almost like another burst of like inspiration. So that was cool. And it was also having somebody there who also recognized the whiteness of the space, and having somebody to talk to about it it was kind of like that was my weekly release, so that then I could kind of go back into my other classes and just like relax a little bit, because I felt like now I had somebody who I could talk to and relate to.
So why was that important to you to feel like having someone to realize the whiteness of this space specifically, like why was that so therapeutic for you?
It was therapeutic because I felt like I was the only one who noticed it. I felt, and that kind of added to.
Sorry, I have to stop you.
All
Notice
right.
what?
Right. All right. It was therapeutic having a mentor that also recognized the whiteness of the space that I was in, because originally, like, I felt as though I was the only one that noticed it. So, for instance, um, being one of very few black people in the program and being a church musician, a lot of the things that I played. So, for instance, if I play something slick, if I play something nice that like I know I've been practicing and I like slipping in somewhere, then it's almost sort of written off as, oh, that's just that gospel chop stuff. That because he's black, oh, he automatically can do that. It's just like not that he, spent time in the practice room like working it out. Like it's just kind of like written off and almost viewed as lesser, like not as valid as stuff that other people are playing. So I had a very uncomfortable interaction with one of my professors. Actually, it was one of my private instructors. I went in for a lesson once and I was early. I was early and the lights were off in the room because they have motion sensor lights, and so the lights were off. He walked in and didn't see me at first, and then he saw me like in the corner of the room. He was like, "Whoa, like, oh, you scared me." He was like, "Oh, Reggie, you like the incognito." I was just like, "Oh, okay. So this is what we're doing." I was like, I didn't know how to react or reply. I was like, in the back of my head, I thought it was funny, but I'm like, yo, I feel some type of way about this. Like, how do I? So I didn't even really address it. I just kind of smoothed it over because I didn't feel like getting into that conversation with him.
And why didn't you feel like getting into that conversation with him?
Because I felt as though he wouldn't get why. I didn't want to get into that conversation with him because I felt as though he wouldn't understand why it was offensive or why it wasn't okay. And sometimes it's easier to just act as if something doesn't bother you than to educate somebody on why that does bother you.
What was the ethnicity of this professor?
Oh, the ethnicity of this professor, he was white. He was very white. I haven't encountered any readings where I felt like my culture was stereotyped or inaccurately represented, but there was an instance. I'm sure it's happened, but there was an instance where in my collegium class there was somebody that they had come in, a clinician come in, and he was talking about aspects of like black church music and how he has incorporated it into like his musical approach to music. And this is a white trombone player, and there were a lot of things that he just got blatantly wrong about black church music. So, and also so I felt some type of way that he was here teaching about a culture that he didn't understand, and then claiming that he's implemented this culture in his own music, and I just kind of had a very big issue with that. But having a white trombonist come in and inaccurately talk about music that I grew up listening, playing, this is very much a part of my upbringing, was it was uncomfortable, but there wasn't really a space for me to call him out on it. Like, it was another one of those instances where it would have been more, it just wouldn't have been, I guess, I don't want to say it wouldn't have been worth it, but it would have been easier just to like let it slide and then to try to call him out on it or have a conversation with him about it and educate him. Like, there people act differently depending on who's around them, and if and I feel as though like a lot of the white professors, because all the other professors are white, sort of feel as though they don't have to be culturally sensitive, because a lot of there are other students of other colors that are and other cultural backgrounds that are undergrad students, but they're undergrad students, or some of them are grad students, but they're not in a position of power. All the people that are in positions of power are like white in my program. So if there were other black faculty in positions of power, I would feel like there would almost be like a system of checks and balances. But
Definitely.
a message from me to the administration, I guess I would say to listen to students of color, and like all students of color, not just student leaders of color, because they don't, even though they're student leaders of color, they don't represent all students of color. I'm a student leader of color, but there are a lot of other black and brown students on campus who I don't know and who I don't know their experience, and they're dealing with things that I might not be aware of